Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. A homeless elderly woman has been robbed of $16,000. New COVID cases dropped below 10,000, but health officials warn against expecting a decline. And Aung San Suu Kyi gets another 3-year jail term, inflating her sentence to 20 years. An elderly homeless woman is pinning on hopes on police recovering $16,000, which was snatched from her. The woman was walking on the streets of Kowloon City at 3 a.m. looking for cardboard to sell when two men robbed her. Macy Mock reports.
Life is a daily struggle for Cho. She's 74 years old and homeless. She survives by scrounging the streets for cardboard and selling them. Last Monday, her misery worsened. It happened in Kowloon City at around 3 a.m. While the city slept, Choi was still toiling, searching for discarded cardboard. Two men then appeared, snatched her waste bag and escaped on bicycles. Inside the bag was $16,000 given to her by one of her sons for living expenses. Choi is somewhat encouraged that one suspect has been arrested, but wants her money back. Police said during the robbery outside the Kowloon City Plaza, one man tried to cover the victim's eyes while the other grabbed her bag. Following an investigation, a 28-year-old jobless man was arrested in Monkeypox on Wednesday. The clothes he was alleged to have worn during the robbery were found in his home, but he reportedly had only several $100s.
We also will conduct further investigation to arrest one of the escaped. That is the suspect that is not arrested by police at this moment.
Chan warned that robbery carries a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. But that is of little comfort to Cho. After more than 10 years living on the streets, all she wants is her money back. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The number of new COVID cases fell below 10,000 today, but health officials warned against expecting a declining trend. They also said efforts are continuing for the purchase of BioNTech doses for toddlers. Janice Low reports.
Health officials have disclosed COVID outbreaks in 2 hospitals. A female patient who contracted the virus on Tuesday at the Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital remains critically ill at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. 2 more patients were found to be infected. A 91-year-old man at the Medicine and Geriatrics ward of Princess Margaret Hospital tested positive yesterday. The hospital identified 3 more COVID patients after contact tracing. At the Zhangxiu Team Home for the Elderly, 7 residents and 3 staff were infected in the past 3 days. All employees at the home have to conduct nucleic acid tests for 3 consecutive days, while 26 residents have to be evacuated for isolation. The city logged 9,901 new cases, of which 187 were imported. Although there were about 700 fewer infections than yesterday, health officials expect the rising trend to continue. They again urged parents to take their toddlers for Sinovac jabs, as BioNTech shots for the youngest age group are unavailable yet.
I understand our relevant colleagues are still liaising with the pharmaceutical company to try to buy the baby version of the BioNTech. I understand it's in progress, although we do not have an exact date of delivery.
The virus claimed 8 more lives. Another 350 COVID patients were admitted to hospital, taking the current tally to 2,667, with 13 in intensive care. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The government says it's prepared for any outbreak of monkeypox, although the city has yet to record a single case. The Center for Health Protection says should anyone contract the disease, close contacts will be offered vaccines. High-risk groups, such as medical workers, can choose to receive jabs. The first batch of monkeypox vaccines is expected to arrive in Hong Kong this month. There are also isolation facilities for close contacts to prevent a monkeypox outbreak in the city. The district court has ordered the confiscation of assets from a radio host who admitted charges of money laundering and sedition. In another court, the former vice chairwoman of a group which organized June 4th vigils said she would not plead guilty to inciting subversion. Maisie Mock reports.
The district court has ordered the confiscation of assets worth nearly $5 million from online radio host Edmund One, also known as Gigs. One had pleaded guilty to 3 charges of money laundering. The confiscation order said it is reasonable to believe that he had gained over $10 million from the crime. One had also pleaded guilty to sedition by using his shows to incite others to oppose the Beijing and Hong Kong governments. Chow Heng-tong, a former vice chairwoman of the now-defunct Hong Kong Alliance, told West Kowloon Magistracy that she would not plead guilty to incitement to subversion. She had requested a preliminary inquiry so that the magistrate could examine the evidence before transferring the case to the High Court. The clips of June 4 vigils Chow played in court contained news footage of the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. The prosecutor said the tapes were not relevant to the case. But acting principal magistrate Veronica Heung rejected the request to stop playing them, saying the tapes were provided by the prosecutor. The case was adjourned to Thursday. At Eastern Magistracy, a 27-year-old jobless man pleaded not guilty to insulting the national anthem and desecrating the regional flag today. Jan Wing-chun was accused of releasing a video online last year showing fencer Edgar Jeong receiving an Olympic gold medal. But the video also contained the tune regarded as the anthem of the 2019 social unrest. Jang was released on bail, and the case was adjourned to next year. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Police in Jiangxi province have arrested 12 members of a syndicate that extorted money from Hong Kongers in an online sex scam.
Which is a little bit of relating to the pandemic situation, because people tend to know other persons through the internet and other social media platforms rather than going out to meet friends.
Tam said all the victims were gay male Hong Kongers who lost a total of $360,000. They were tricked through dating apps and were blackmailed after engaging in so-called naked chats. 13 of the victims were students. Overseas, a military court in Myanmar has sentenced former civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 3 years in prison with hard labor for electoral fraud, which activists say did not occur in the 2020 elections.
We did not observe election fraud, quite frankly. We did not see that. Domestic election observers from Myanmar also did not see that. The claims of the junta that 25% of voters were fraudulent, this does not hold up to our scrutiny for sure.
Suu Kyi is already serving a 17-year sentence after being convicted earlier of sedition, corruption, and illegally importing walkie-talkies. The 77-year-old Nobel laureate now faces a total of 20 years behind bars. In another case, Britain's former ambassador to Myanmar, Vicky Bowman, and her husband have been jailed for a year each for violating immigration laws. Argentina's vice president has narrowly escaped an assassination attempt. Cristina Fernández de Kirchner was greeting supporters outside her home in Buenos Aires when a man in a crowd took a shot at point-blank range. But the gun, loaded with 5 bullets, failed to fire. Shocked supporters overpowered the gunman, who is now in custody and has been identified as a Brazilian national. Fernández de Kirchner served as president from 2007 to 2015 and is under investigation for corruption. The Japanese yen has plunged to a new 24-year low against the US dollar. Other major currencies also retreated as investors parked the cash in the United States to take advantage of high interest rates. Chloe Fong reports.
It's been said that the dollar's gain is the world's pain. And this appears to be the case as the U.S. currency finds renewed favor with investors lured by higher American interest rates. The Japanese yen took a beating, slumping to a new low since 1998, with the greenback now worth 140 yen, compared with 115 in March. The widening gap came as the Bank of Japan refused to abandon its monetary easing policy. Japan's bid to boost economic recovery with cheap money contrasts sharply with the U.S. Federal Reserve, which has been raising rates at a faster pace in a desperate attempt to tame runaway inflation. Economists said a weaker yen could nudge the central bank into shifting its stance. But Japanese Finance Minister Sanachi Suzuki warned against disorderly changes that could have a negative impact. The Korean won is at its weakest against the US dollar since 2009, while the Chinese yuan slid to its lowest level against the greenback in 2 years. Beijing has taken an opposite path from Washington and lowered interest rates last month to try and reverse its property market woes. The euro, meanwhile, is at a 20-year low to the US dollar, while the British pound lost 5% in the biggest drop in 6 years. For now, the US currency sits at the top of the pile, hitting a 2-decade high on rising interest rates. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended down 145 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was up $4, Alibaba lost $1.55, while the Tracker Fund was down 16 cents. BYD Company was down $4.20, while JD.com was down by $1. On to the weather now. Staying fine and dry this weekend. Temperatures tomorrow will range between 27 and 33 degrees, rising to 34 degrees on Sunday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Friday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Good evening.